right, thank you for that. We now move on to the final segment of today's program, and that is a Family Check, where we always get to discuss anything that concerns the family. And today we are going to be talking about depression, anxiety, as well as addiction. These are conversations that we always have here on Good Morning Kenya on a monthly basis, just to ensure that we are playing our role as part of the, the space that can help change the narrative when it comes to dealing with some of these issues, and especially given the past 2 years, what we have all gone through as part of the global population. So today, the focus will be on depression, anxiety, as well as addiction. We'll compress them into this one discussion and get the most that we can during this time that we have here. But in case you are just joining us, karibu tena sana. This is Good Morning Kenya. I am Jain Wambui, and with us in studio today to help us with this conversation, we have Nchebere Muriuki, who is a counseling psychologist working with Purpose Counselling and Wellness Center. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Wambui.
Thank you so much for making time to be with us today.
Asante, pleasure is mine.
Are you on the social media platform?
No.
All right.
Yes.
But if you have any questions that you want to send through, use the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Our official station handle is at KBC Channel 1 across all the social media platforms. And if you have to leave the comfort of your home, you can always stream us live on our website, that is www.kbc.co.ke. So let's start with, basic definitions of some of these terminologies. We hear them over and over again. We get to even use them so loosely. But from a medical professional standing, when we talk about, let's start with depression, which is something that almost all of us have interacted with directly or indirectly. Generally speaking, what are we referring to?
Thank you so much. And I'm pleased to be with you here in today's program. Yes, these three terms, as you've said them, depression, anxiety, and addiction, are intertwined. They are something that when you mention this, you also mention the other thing. Depression, it's a mental illness that completely destabilizes the mental chemistry. What we call mental imbalance. Now, this chemical imbalance can be caused by so many things. It can be caused by genetics. It can be caused by environment factors. It can also be caused by psychological factors. And these factors are intertwined. So when depression walks in, it leaves a person not being able to function normally.
Okay.
Depression basically is a disease of the mind. Now, this disease, it is at a part where the neurotransmitters, or the way your brain and my brain fires, how it functions. And these neurotransmitters, we can talk about dopamine, we can talk about serotonin, we can talk about glutamate. All these, there are many. Now, when they don't work in their natural way, it causes damage. Now, that damage can be seen or dealt with or experienced on the outside. That is physically how I behave, how I act, and how I think. So in a nutshell, depression is a disease that affects how I think, how I act, and eventually how I behave.
All right. Now, you've mentioned that they are intertwined, all these three conditions.
Yeah.
And at some point you did mention, when it comes to depression, the normal functioning of, let's talk about the brain, the neurotransmission, is distorted.
Yes.
And now, how does addiction come into play in line with its definition and the link to depression?
Thank you. Addiction, I will call it in one word, it's enslavement. It's enslavement, yes. That's how simply I can reduce it. At the same time, it's a disease of the mind. At the same time, addiction is the disarrangement again of the mental neurotransmission. Your brain and my brain has got a natural way of functioning. When there is pressure around you, let's take for example, I was supposed to be here at a certain time.
Yes.
I am late, and you're like 10 minutes going on air. You will definitely be anxious. If that state of anxiety continues, your brain is unable to manage that amount of overwhelming. Now, when that happens, sometimes we look for ways to calm down our systems. And time and again, we have always used things like a drink. We forget that this drink has got chemicals that are powerful, that affect the natural flow of our functioning of our mind. So our brain has got an ability, when its natural impulses are disturbed, it learns of the new introduction.
To calm it.
Yes.
All right.
So what we normally do in some instances of addiction, and I'm avoiding going to substance and these other things, I just want to look at it from the functionality of the brain. So these substances that we introduce in our mind, they are made with an intent. And that intent, it's either to knock you down, it's either to make you feel nice. Now that feeling of nice is the imbalance. You are removing the natural functioning and introducing something new.
And the brain masters
that and recognizes, you know what?
I like that.
Thank you. And it reminds you, you remember that time you were under this kind of pressure? You took a glass.
So in one way or the other, the brain is hardwired to ensure that you are calm, you are in a state that is considered functioning. It's the hardwired nature of the brain.
Yes, at all times.
At all times.
And that's the function, if you can allow me, of the gods. He has created us that way, and that is not our function. So it knows, if this pain comes this way, I need to release this chemical so that I can manage that pain naturally. When that pain is not managed, we pick a painkiller. We are trying now to offer an external help to this problem.
All right. Now, let's come to anxiety.
Yes.
And it's something that you've actually just briefly mentioned, still in that definition of addiction.
Yes.
And anxiety is something that I believe every grown-up at some point has experienced anxiety.
Absolutely.
And in some cases, we even use it so loosely, saying, "Hey, mi nakwanga na anxiety mbaya. Mi nakwanga, we nakwanga na anxiety." But when you talk about anxiety as a disease of the mind or as a condition, correct my terminology if I am wrong.
Yes.
What are we referring to?
We are simply referring to anticipated problem.
Anticipated problem.
Yes.
So accurate.
When we talk of anticipation, it is something that you think it's coming. I'll give you a very simple example. And you say, the grown-ups, your first date. Okay, I like the reaction. I hope the camera was not looking at you.
It wasn't.
At that state, it depends with how serious that date was for you. Now, let's work with it failed. I hope it didn't. If it did,
Yes.
I'm sure your sleep was disturbed. I'm sure you were so annoyed. I'm sure you're so angry. Now, all these factors, you had built them before the anxiety came. And why did it become that way? It became that way because your brain was unable to deal with this thing that it was offered. So anxiety, it is anything that is intense, anything that is excessive, anything that causes persistent worry, anything that brings uncontrolled fear.
All right. To just seek clarity. From what I am understanding from your definition, anxiety is something that almost everyone experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're going for a job interview, when you are meeting your parent-in-laws for the first time, when you're being introduced to new environments, you tend to experience some level of anxiety.
Yes.
But at what point does it become a condition that somebody suffers from that hinders even their normal functioning, going about their day or activities? At what point does it become a condition that requires treatment?
When our mind cannot handle it naturally. For example, when I was called for this interview yesterday night, I called the guy and asked him, how will I prepare 3 huge, intense medical issues that program 1, 2, 3, anxiety, depression, and addiction? At that time, I was anxious. I was wondering, how will I manage 30 minutes, 1 hour? It's not possible. So he had to calm me. Think of it. He didn't do it. Item number 1. My sleep would have been fast casualty because I don't know what is expected of me. I am going from this side to that side, trying to get information instantly. If that goes on, I would have guaranteed you by morning I would have had a running stomach. And it's a natural way. Your body is trying now to deal with the pressure that it is receiving. It has gone beyond the normal function of the brain. So what does the brain do? It sends a signal.
We need a let out.
Yes. Now, sleep has gone. I don't have a way to deal with it. When now I get at that particular time, I start thinking of ways to address me. Sometimes you find people having sweating palms, heartbeat races, concentration becomes zero, reasoning, and all these things become a problem. Now, your question was, when does it become a medical issue? When it persists.
Over what certain period of time?
Anything beyond 2 weeks, that is so serious. It is going out of control. Take a scenario, death. And this was your only life. The person was gone. If you do not get a mechanism of addressing this loss before you bury, and that's why I love the Muslims' way of doing it. From my profession, that's one of the best way to assist the people who have been left behind to deal with the loss, because burial or burying has a finality. So it helps so that we can go back to normalcy. So anything that is persistent, anything that will last more than a month and it keeps on going, now your brain gets to a point it cannot deal with this issue, and now you need help. And help maybe can be through medicine, or it can be through psychotherapy, or what is commonly called talk therapy.
All right.
Yes.
Now let's come to understand how complex these conditions may be. And there's always been this conversation around gender and how each gender is affected when it comes to anxiety or addiction or depression. Just looking at some depression, and in a lifetime women are bound to are twice as likely to experience a depressive episode than our male counterparts. But on the flip side, men are committing more suicide than women as a result of depression. What role does gender play when it comes to these conditions that affect the normal functioning of the brain?
I will answer your question from 2 aspects.
Sure.
Environmental and social. Women are faced with more stressful, more anxious issues, more things that are more pressing. The beauty about women, they have a better coping mechanism than men.
Better in a sense that he's healthier, or
yes,
because I do believe women have a higher sense of self-preservation than men.
I will disagree with that.
Why?
Because every person is created with a mechanism inside that is for self-preservation.
Okay.
And that's why we come with the flight, fight, flee situation. So every one of us is born with that.
Okay.
However, all of us have and must practice mechanisms of coping with the problem. Why am I talking of coping? Because stress, anxiety is part of life.
Yes.
So we are supposed to be faced by these things. And when they come, how do I address them? How do I manage them? How do I deal with the issue?
Yes.
Back to the women. They have a better coping mechanism because you will walk into a matatu, a lady sits next to another lady, and they are coming from Kawangware to the city center. Before they reach the city center, they have discussed their problems. It's like they know each other for 20 years. In the process, one becomes the therapist and the other becomes the client. In the process, the pressure is reduced. One's like, wachana na yako. Yangu. Bas. Now, in the process, I realize, so this is a common thing.
See, Mimi too.
See, Mimi too. That's an healing aspect in its own self. So you left the house purely anxious, depressed, and you were almost at a verge of breaking. By the time you reach town, you're feeling better. That's a coping mechanism that is better. You talked it out. And the moment you talk, our brain has got a formula of relieving pressure through talk. That is women. So they use the environment and the sociability of the environment to deal with the problem.
Okay.
Look at how we socialize men and boys. Mwanaume ni kujikasa. I have seen parents with boys and girls. A boy falls, amuka. Panalialia hapa kama mwanamke. A girl falls 2 minutes later. Oh, sorry, mommy. Kuja, baby. Now, this man or this boy grows socially knowing men are not supposed to talk. I bottle up my issues. Up to when? There is a ceiling. There is a level you can't do this. Environmentally, we are disadvantaged by the fact that we are not given an opportunity to know it is okay for a man not to be okay. And it is okay for me as a man to come to you and tell you, Aki, life imenishida. And I let you hear me. Sometimes you may not offer me any solution, but the fact that you gave me an opportunity to speak about my issue, you are therapeuticing me, you are healing me, and you are saving me from taking my life. So environmentally and socially, I've contributed 100 times for the men to take their own lives because pressure has reached a point they cannot be able. I'll give you the second example. A mother will leave the house. She has nothing for the little children. She will come and plead with the person she meets. Akinipe kasi ya kukuoshea hizi nguo. Watoto wangu wasilale njaa. The person she meets has mercy, offers a job, offers a few shillings and maybe even food. Is her problem solved? Yes. Have they survived 2-3 more days? Yes. A man works, he has qualifications and he has been taught. Enda shule, soma, pata kazi. So he knows as long as I have this qualification, as long as I have this paper, then the job will come looking for me. He spends the whole day knocking on doors, but he left a small job of fixing somebody's fence, live fence, and he could have earned some 300 shillings. But his qualifications, Soma Patakasi, it's a mentality he got from the environment. He has socially interpreted it, and because of that, he's not going to do anything. And the pressure keeps on building, Comes home, they look at him, when he mwanaume inagani, pressure is building. At the end of the day, he says, there's no point of living. I have to take my life.
Is there a hormonal dispensation looking at both genders that can lead to anxiety or depression in these particular cases, or even addiction?
Both male and female have got hormones that causes us to have anxiety.
But not one more than the other?
No.
Okay.
The point is, how am I able to cope? And that's why people come to therapy. The first thing is for us as therapists and psychologists to understand them, know their problem, and then help them to start learning coping mechanism.
Now, speaking of those coping mechanisms, before we even get there, how do you pick up on these aspects that, are the telltale signs that I am not dealing with this the proper way? What are those manifestations of anxiety, of depression, or addiction that we, the common mwananchi, might not be alive to, but actually are clear telltale signs that you as a profession can see, there could be a problem that is waiting to, display itself?
Well, first and foremost, I will say that is an aspect of the training. Whenever I tell people I am a psychologist, the first thing I'm told, umeanza kunisoma akili. So usianze kujua chenye sijakwambia. As a psychologist, I'm trained to hear what you're telling. Not working for you. But from the look of things, they look as the best. So my work becomes a mirror for you, for me to deter you to do certain things that becomes a problem to you. For example, I'll give an example of a session I had urgently yesterday. I was called to help. And this was between a mother and a son who is challenged. And as I was listening to both of them, I picked things that the mother is doing to aggravate the situation of the son. And because of the situation we were in, when I finished, I requested the mother to see me out. And the first thing I told her, the words you use are number one cause of the problem that we are having. I also learned that it is because of our own situation. Now, your question was, which are these things? Sometimes it is difficult for the common person to pick those things. But I will put them. When you talk of Mimi Siwesi, I cannot. The I can't statement, it's a negative statement. It is registered in your mind and it becomes a block to you.
I can't deal with stresses in the morning. Over. I can't eat this kind of food.
We are done.
I can't deal with this person.
That statement is a start of disaster for any individual. Because what you are telling your mind is, we are done. I can't
deal with this.
Yes. Why is it some people will be able to fight? I am a fan of wrestling. And I watch and I love John Cena a lot. He's not very strong. There are some guys who are more strong than him. But John Cena, in my own interpretation, has got a longer threshold of taking it and pushing it to its opponent. When the opponent has done everything to win the game, John is able to tap it out on the third, before the third count is done. So John is able to wear out his opponent. And when the opponent has told themselves, I am done, John has got the last energy. It's because John came into the fight. I can do it. He is stronger than me, but I will beat him. It is the only strength that is only recorded into your mind. All the hormones, all the neurotransmission, all the chemistry, all the biology of your mind is geared to do one thing: win. And when that happens, it does not matter the amount
price that you had to pay.
You have, exactly. You will overcome it.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that can only be detected by psychologists.
So those monologues, those conversations we tell ourselves that, hey, manze imenizidi, I can't do this anymore. That is the first sign that we don't really take it as a serious issue, but it could be one of the things that is predisposing us.
Yes. And when we don't know that, it sometimes again comes from our environment. What kind of environment did I grow as a child? These are some of the things that when I go to therapy, we call them ACEs, Advanced Childhood Experiences. Trauma is one of the greatest contributors to these three things that we are talking about: anxiety, addiction, and depression. Have you noticed, I don't know whether you're a parent, don't answer me. Have you noticed when a father walks home, it's a point of authority? And I will say this even before we go too far, that our identity as human beings is not offered by our mothers. It's offered by our fathers. A topic you call me for another day.
Whole other discussion.
Yes. Now, when this daddy figure walks in and bangs the door, the children are told psychologically, Nikubaya, take cover. When a father calls a mother name, you are unaware, causing trauma that will be manifested through unnecessary anxiety, through uncoordinated addictions, through depression that is these days affecting children as low as 10 years of age. Now, these factors become a problem to us. So what do? We are supposed to know things that we do that become triggers, that follow us every minute, that we do unconsciously. And because it was so unconscious, the damage is so big.
By the time you realize
By the time you deal with it, it's what we call in our field developmental trauma. And when developmental trauma walks in, then we have patients or clients who are unable to deal with simple literal anxiety issues. You tell them, why are you late? That all day, they are confused.
They cannot function properly.
It is because they did not pass the milestones of development the normal way each and every person should. And so such clients, I start with them as early as 7 years of age. And we come all through. Therapy sometimes can take up to 10, 15, 20 sessions.
Now, speaking of therapy, for most people, therapy is still, quote unquote, a foreign concept.
Say that again.
It is a white man problem or a white man solution. And sadly so, there's so many people who we're seeing more and more cases of depression. Many people committing suicide as a result of one issue or the other that maybe could have been helped.
Yes.
If they sought therapy. This perception around therapy, how can it be changed among the population to understand that therapy is not a white man problem or a white man solution, and it's something that can be accommodated within our African space as well? Culturally, looking at the burden that comes
yes,
with
I will start by saying that therapy in Africa has been there since time immemorial.
Just not in the version that is painted today?
Yes, it is not in the version that we look at it today.
Yes.
But therapy is still there, and it has existed with us. I grew up in a society in the village. Most of the time, when you disagree or you're beaten by your elders, aunties were there and grandparents to soothe us. Sometimes we used to be sent to them so that they can give us words of counsel. That was therapy. And it worked well. What has made therapy to be what it is today? It is because our nature of our works, for example. It is me with my children only. We have at the 3rd floor or 10th floor of a certain flat, it's work, pressure, and we do not have a system of let out. Number one. Number two, the perception that we have as a society that therapy is for people who are losing it. Every one of us needs therapy at one given time in life. I actually say that in 1 year, at least if you're functioning very well and you're managing everything very well, you need at least 10 sessions per year if you're very okay, just to work with a therapist so that they can be able to highlight, to bring awareness to you, and to be able to tell you, look here, this is a line you need to live. Back to what I said about how we bring up our children. When the family fabric is dysfunctional, then we have higher cases of people who are not socially fit.
Socialization becomes a problem.
Yes. Number two, when we have a system in the family that despises this. For example, we always tell our boys, sasa unakaa kwa wanawake ni nini? You become a woman. Now, this child grows knowing gossip is only for women. I will tell you, as a professional, there is a space for gossip for all genders. It has a space in our mind that soothes us. But when we are stopped from it, then we become a people that is growing minus something. Number three, it is time for everyone, leaders, people in authority, teachers, everyone to come to the realization that therapy is not for people who have lost it. Therapy is curative, therapy has got solution, and therapy is the way to go. Before even you think of going to see your doctor, you first of all need to pay a visit to a therapist. Because there are so many things that we help align in people's lives before they become a problem. So therapy is the way to go. But I remember your question was, what can we do? We need to have a clarion call from our churches to our houses, to the public figures, to the government, to the Ministry of Education, that therapy is the way to go.
Therapy is the way to
Yes.
go. And at what age would you recommend to start therapy to just help deal with, and especially looking at kids as they grow up? Because as parents, you in your own mind, you think, I'm doing the best I can for this child with what I have at this particular space in time, but they seem to be ungrateful. They don't appreciate what I'm doing. At what age would you recommend therapy to be one of the tools that is used by parents to even help them raise their kids? Or aspects of bringing their child?
As soon as a child is born. To be born itself is pressure. Just let's go to a woman in the labor process. That's pressure enough. And it's pressure for the child who is coming out. So, therapy should start right at home. And it requires a sober, normal, functioning parent so that they will offer the environment for the child to grow. At the age of 1, we are born in a system whereby our minds know. Look at a 1-year-old child. When they want something, because they don't have the system of talking, they cry it out. As parents, when they cry, we know they are asking for nyonyo. And we offer them. And true, they keep quiet. They are simply saying, I am in distress. I need help.
Yes.
So, from birth all through, we all need therapy.
Okay.
The point that I want to separate is, at home from 0 to around 3 years, that therapy session should be offered by the caregivers, who happens to be mom, dad, and the house help. That system must function normally. If there is a dysfunctionality within the system, within the unit,
yes,
then we are introducing a child who is already faced by, number 1, what we call attachment trauma. Now, when that attachment trauma occurs, that child is entering the market with a problem.
All right.
What age then, quickly let me finish that, what age do I start therapy? 3 years is the age to start. It's the age that child can be brought to me and we can have a session.
Okay.
At 3-year-old, we will do what we call play time.
Now, I think we're going to have to pause at that particular point looking at this conversation, and we might pick it up on our health segment and just look at therapy in itself, what it's supposed to look like. Should you get a therapist that knows you from how you grew up, or a complete stranger? Do they know your previous sins or not? That is a whole area of conversation that we'll be having on our health segment. But for now, we have to pause at that particular point due to the interest of time. Again, some of these conversations, we cannot exhaust them in one sitting, and that is why we have multiple conversations around such discussions. But in brief, we have been speaking with Nchebere Muriuki, who is a counseling psychologist, and of course has been joining us to just talk about how you can overcome anxiety, depression, as well as addiction. We will continue with this conversation sooner than you know. But for now, I am Jain. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. We will see you tomorrow.